Get lost in the acoustic brilliance of 3D audio that surrounds you. Feel the embrace of the massage seats that adapt to your every move. Experience the warmth of a vehicle that welcomes you as you approach. We could tell you what makes a Lincoln SUV so extraordinary, but don't take our word for it. Take it on a test drive at the Lincoln Summer Invitation with exclusive offers on now, only at your local Lincoln retailer.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy.
I'm Justin Holmes, professor of political science at the University of Northern Iowa, and I'm joined today by Sam Dewey, who is an attorney in D.C. Sam, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
All right. Well, good to be with you. So we've got a lot of things we can talk about. There's a lot going on as per usual. So I think we'll jump right in. So to start off, we've got some foreign policy stuff that was one of the top stories of the week, at least earlier in the week. And that is Trump meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine. This comes a week after meeting with Putin from Russia in an ongoing attempt to negotiate some kind of resolution of this ongoing conflict. Sam, what are your thoughts on this? Kind of the Zelensky and the Putin kind of back to back here together. Does this feel like progress? Is it possible to make progress? Can we solve this here in the next 20 minutes or so?
I don't think we're going to solve it in the next 20 minutes. I do think progress was made, and I do think it's possible to continue making progress. My view is that there was good progress in these meetings, that we may not have seen it, but that there were high-level, face-to-face, behind-the-scenes discussions, and that we're going to see something from that down the road in terms of positioning, or we're going to see, if we don't get where we need to be, another avenue of approach. So I think that, yes, I got the sense that stuff was being done. It wasn't just superficial, and we'll see where we are.
Okay. What do you think, as we get towards some sort of, presumably there'll be a resolution here eventually, where do you think this will end up? What does a solution to this situation look like?
I mean, I think what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have some sort of, on one hand, Putin gets to keep a large part of the Russian oblasts or Russian-speaking oblasts, and that there's some sort of territory transfer, and in return there's some sort of security guarantee, and that has been proposed as being anything from something similar to a NATO Article 5 guarantee to a guarantee that takes the form of both U.S. citizens being on the ground to exploit the mineral rights, who would obviously be defended, and then a guarantee of swift economic reprisal should anything occur. So I think we're going to see something in those lanes. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but I sense that those are the various avenues at play, that there'll be some sort of territory given to Putin. Under the theory that he's not going to back down completely. The casualty numbers are variable, but let's call it close to 1 million men killed and wounded, pot committed. He's got to get something to satisfy his own base. People are going to recognize that because he's pot committed, they're going to give him something. And I think it'll be some form of territory. But then on the other hand, I think there's going to be some form of security guarantee in that spectrum. I don't think it'll end up being an Article 5 type guarantee because I don't think the president is there, and I don't think his base will stand for it, but I think it'll be something. It could be there's European nations give that and we agree to sell them weapons and provide financial support or something like that. There's a lot of variability there, but I think you're going to see territory go into Putin and some sort of firm security guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time, and it's certainly not something that I like, but I have a hard time. I'm kind of with you, having a hard time seeing a scenario where this doesn't end with, some of that seized territory ending up with Russia, because I do think, there is this sort of. I think you're right. I mean, there's this kind of sunk cost trap, for him on some level, where you've thrown a million men at this, and you want to get something to show for it, and frankly, beyond that, you don't want to look weak. I think, one of the sort of surprising things about this is how long it's drawn out. When this started, my expectation, I think, would have been that, Ukraine's going to get rolled, almost immediately. And it really has shown up some sort of real limitations of the strength of sort of the Russian military here, fighting a country that we wouldn't have expected to give them as much trouble as they would. So I feel like both of those things really commit Putin to wanting something out of this, both, wanting to justify kind of his losses, as well as wanting to not look weak. If you go back to kind of the status quo with the tail between your legs, that's going to be a real challenge. I think the difficulty becomes that, Ukraine is still kind of loath to give a whole lot up. It seems like Putin wants some pretty major territorial concessions here, and it really doesn't seem like Ukraine wants to budge on this either. They have, I think, kind of some of the same potentially domestic incentives there, where you have a home base to play for. They have arguably sort of a moral case on their side. That, hey, we were invaded. We shouldn't have to give up other territory. Et cetera. But the status quo here feels sort of like at some point nobody can really win this. We've kind of got a stalemate. So, at least on the public facing stuff, we certainly have seen some vague hints of progress, but I certainly haven't seen anything that smacks of kind of a deal being imminent. Do you have thoughts on how much longer this could go on at this point?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know how much longer this can go on. I do have two thoughts that are kind of relevant to what we're dealing with. I mean, I think everybody wants, or three, I'll call it three. Everybody wants this ended quickly. There is a clear imperative to end it. And I think even Putin has an imperative to end it because it's to an extent unsustainable on his end, particularly given the secondary sanctions Trump has put in place against India and other purchasers of Russian oil, which has shut down a lot of his hard cash flow. I think everybody's motivated in some sense to end it. I think actually the least motivated to end it may be Zelensky, because then he has to face the electorate, ironically. I do think there is some element of that going on, that, as long as he can keep elections suspended, he's in power. If he has to face the electorate, who knows how that's going to play out. So that's kind of my first point. My second point is that, yeah, obviously Ukraine has the moral high ground. Obviously, they don't want to give up territory, but I think at the end of the day, the president is going to make them. And I think the reason he's going to do that is because there's only one party here who's pot committed and has the ability to climb the escalatory ladder and say, you know what, I'm going to lob a tactical nuke into Kiev. Because there will be no response. They can't retaliate against me. I'll get more secondary sanctions. There may be an economic response, but if I've shown that I have a hair trigger on tactical nuclear use, at that point they're going to say I'm so pot committed. Maybe I shouldn't destroy. Or at that point, he could calculate that the U.S. and others will say Putin is so pot committed he's willing to use a nuke. We can't destroy his economy. He may use another. We better get this done quickly. So I think there's an element of nuclear blackmail here, which is driving kind of the fundamental unfairness of the deal on point 2. And then kind of on point 3 on progress. I mean, this is the first time since this thing is going on, we've seen everybody kind of sit down and hammer out the principles, sit down together and try to hammer something out. I mean, we really didn't have that before. And I think just convening everything, just putting the focus on it, getting the principles in a room is progress in a way. I even had a Democrat friend say that, only Trump was capable of putting all those people in a room and saying, let's sit down, let's go all night and try to find a solution. It was almost like thinking of this because was watching season 3 of The Gilded Age, but it's almost like when J.P. Morgan used to lock people in a room or lock them up at his estate to force them to come to a deal. I think there is an element of only President Trump. President Biden certainly was not capable of putting the principles in the room and saying we're going to work something out. And they worked late. They were locked up in private late. So hopefully we're going to make progress. Now, to your point, we can't see it. So we don't know that they weren't just, sitting there glad handing each other. But I think just getting them all together face to face, locking them in the room, there was some progress there. I have to hope.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, it would be nice to see this done, obviously on some reasonable resolution. I guess I'm a little skeptical. They brought them in a week apart. So, in terms of it seems like it might be more productive to have them, sort of simultaneously, but apparently that's not in the cards. So I guess that just remains to be sort of seen. There weren't any sort of major revelations that came out of this, so certainly we can hope that behind the scenes we've got some progress, but we'll I guess I feel like we've been talking about this one on here for a long time, as long as I've been doing the show. So it feels like sort of a status quo. So hopefully we get some movement there. All right. Any closing thoughts on that, or should we move on to something else?
Well, I think we should move on, and I think we should keep watching. And as I said, I'm optimistic we may get somewhere this time.
All right. So a second thing that I think is sort of a big story this week came out, just yesterday, Friday. This is Saturday morning that we're recording this. But a stock deal with Intel. So Intel, major chip maker, et cetera, that's been in a lot of trouble for some time, financially speaking, and this week, President Trump basically announced that Intel is going to sell the U.S. government a 10% stake in the business. This is worth about $8.9 billion. So this is a large sort of investment here. And this is sort of an interesting deal or interesting scenario. We've had certainly other, sort of government interventions with companies, kind of the big automakers back during the recession and things like that. But this is sort of unusual where, you're getting a stake, a government stake in the business, and certainly has raised some concerns. Various things have been sort of said about, what what this investment looks like or where this comes from. But basically, this is predicated on releasing certain CHIPS money. This is a federal program from 2022 that was giving grants to various chip makers, signed by the Biden administration. The original version of that, or the law of that, did not have any sort of equity stakes in it, and essentially what appears to have happened here is that president said, look, if you want this money, then we need a stake. This is kind of deal making sort of things. This comes about a month after he had put pressure on the CEO Lip Bhutan, who's the chief of Intel, basically telling him he should step down from the company, kind of waging some social media campaign against him. Ultimately, Tan decides, to take this deal, and so we have kind of this new scenario here, where we have the U.S. owning a pretty big stake in this. They claim that these are not voting shares except under certain circumstances. I'm making air quotes here because they don't explain what those circumstances are. So this is kind of new territory. Commerce Secretary Lutnick called this historic and sort of a new thing. But it certainly does raise some questions about sort of the independence of business, et cetera. So, Sam, what are your thoughts on this? Is this sort of a new model for things that we might see more of? Is this just sort of a placing just sort of a single company bailout here? What's going on here, do you think?
It's hard to tell. It reads to me like this was a limited bailout, which the deal maker wanted to attach some security to. I'm not even sure if the shares are voting, from what I've read.
Well, it was very strange the way it was talked about. They're mostly not, except under certain circumstances, which go undescribed. So, yeah, I guess it's unclear kind of what say, if any, the government has in running the business at that point.
Yeah, I mean, they're not getting a directorship, which normally a 10% stake would get you. So I think it's just more Trump securitizing the investment. I mean, look, I can understand why he's concerned about this, because there really is a national security issue at stake, particularly vis-a-vis China, with ensuring that we have the ability to produce the best chips and produce them quickly and produce them here. Because remember, a lot of the other chip capacity is on Taiwan, and that's great. I mean, they make good products. I think that's important. I think the concern is going to be, if there were a conflict with Taiwan and you lose Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing, I mean, Samsung's manufacturing over on that area too. You've really only got Intel for the free world, so you need to back that up. So I see this as a limited intervention in a clear national security case.
I think I do buy that. That this is one of those things where we are so dependent on chips in so many things. It's not just I'm looking down at my ancient laptop here. I think it used to have an Intel Inside sticker on it, but it's come off at some point. But it's not just computers at this point. It's all kinds of other things. It's smartphones, it's cars, it's all sorts of stuff. So yeah, and I think this was, as we saw back kind of during COVID, supply chain disruptions in semiconductors were disruptive to a lot of the economy. You saw it in places that weren't just computers, et cetera, but you'd have, cars sitting around that were built but for, a little bit of the electronics that they just couldn't get the parts. So I do think, on the supply, I think this is a serious issue. And maintaining Intel's continued existence is definitely in our interest, not just on the consumer side, but certainly on the military side as well. I do have, I think, some general concerns here in terms of the way that this happened, and I get not wanting to necessarily throw good money after bad and such, but kind of the way this deal went down, with Trump putting a lot of pressure on the CEO, firsthand, but also this is basically money that was already allocated. This is a problem that feels like it should have been more or less solved. And essentially changing the terms, which is something that speaks to some kind of process level problems that I generally have with Trump, which is basically that he's renegotiating things on really questionable authority here. This was money that they were supposed to get already, and this is a problem that more or less had been dealt with under the CHIPS Act, but here he's attempting to exert more control over the company, control over the CEO, et cetera, and I do think that is a problematic sort of situation a bit. I suppose it would be one thing to be sort of making this deal, in the first place, but to sort of start attaching conditions afterwards towards an end that I'm a little unclear, what this is for, it does strike me as kind of an odd exercise of presidential power.
So, I mean, yeah, the money was already allocated, but money was not going out under the CHIPS Act in a number of circumstances. So I think that just points to a broader process problem. I don't think it's Trump specific. I think it's broader. As to kind of the deal he negotiated, I haven't seen anything other than kind of a high level term sheet reported in the press. I haven't even seen the high level term sheet. So I don't know the legal authorities questions at this point. I'm going to look forward to seeing it. I will say that Trump generally is willing to make investments, but at the same time is more likely to try to securitize them than others. So I view this as just a kind of securitization. And the pressure on the CEO, I think, just relates back to the animating concern, which was that the CEO had too many economic ties to China. And I think it's perfectly fair to say you're the CEO of a key American company who needs a bailout. Well, what's going on with ties to China? I mean, we can't have that. I think that's in the core national interest. I don't have a problem with it at all. And I think that security imperative, to me, absent more information coming out, again, I emphasize, I've just read what's reported. I haven't even seen a short term sheet on the actual specifics of the deal.
And that's absolutely fair. This is fresh. This was 4:00 yesterday afternoon. So yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying. Look, to me, I have far less questions than I normally would, given the clear national security imperative here, and that it is involving China, which is without a doubt the biggest national security threat to us and the free world.
I guess my skepticism here a little bit is just, if he's such a security threat before, we're keeping him around now. I guess that just rings a little hollow to me in terms of how this is playing out. I mean, the guy's a security threat or he's not, and suddenly he's not a security threat now that we've negotiated this deal. So, it could be, hey, the terms of this that come later are, they hem him in somehow or something. But
you might also see him divest. So I think the concerns were economic ties. You may well see the CEO has decided to sell positions.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. I would suppose, but I don't know. On the face of this, I have a degree of skepticism, I suppose. So, any parting thoughts on that? I feel like this is one that we may.
I really want to see the full term. I really want to read. I really hope that the news, instead of analyzing the tidbits, just takes the position of, here's the issue spotting, here are the areas to develop, and then we get the term sheet and move it from there. Because I view this as a kind of sui generis national security bailout from everything I've read to date. And I think we've got to analyze specifics, not go off on set ideological tropes in either direction. I mean, I've seen some free market people say, oh my God, this is socialist. And if this is securitizing a key national security investment, yeah, we've been doing that for a while. It's not socialist. I mean, you can point to that going back to the Civil War was when we first started securitizing investments in the defense industry. So I'm not concerned about that, and I think both sides, everybody should just hold their fire until we've seen the specifics. That's my closing thought.
Hey, fair enough. Yeah, I mean that's certainly sort of a. I think this is a fluid, ongoing situation. So. All right. Turning next to, I think, kind of an ongoing issue in terms of the Fed. Trump has been certainly vocal about wanting the Fed to do some different things, particularly in terms of dropping interest rates. People have been trying to kind of read the Jerome Powell tea leaves kind of in his statements this week about kind of economic cooling and things like that might finally get us to a interest rate cut that Trump has wanted pretty badly since kind of the beginning of his term. He's also stepped up pressure here on Fed Governor Lisa Cook. Her term is not up for quite some time, but he has kind of dropped allegations of mortgage fraud on her and demands that she resigns. He's taken this one to social media, as well. And it largely looks, from the outside, like he's really trying to open up another seat. He wants Powell gone, would like Cook gone as well, because certainly he's got then the opportunity to add one or potentially two of his own replacements. In particular, it seems like he wants to sort of fast track Stephen Miran before the Fed's September meeting. So, there is sort of kind of limited ability here. The Fed has a degree of independence from the political politics, supposed to be somewhat above the fray. But they are, of course, appointed by presidents. This it's getting kind of down to the wire here as far as a September meeting. But it certainly does look like, Trump is trying to put some pressure here on the Fed, either to kind of perhaps do his bidding or get out in some way. In terms of sort of the authority here, timeline, et cetera, what do you think is going to happen? My thought here is that, getting rid of Cook, kind of between now and the next Fed meeting, it seems like a very short timeline, in terms of, this just kind of dropped this week. But where do you think this is headed? What?
I mean, I think the president is going off of, hey, I've got a referral. She may have committed mortgage fraud. Um, that the Going off of that, and I think he is rightly frustrated at the failure of the Fed to act. I think rates should have been cut. I think most people agree on that. I think it's interesting that the last meeting had published dissents. In fact, it had the most published dissents going back to the Clinton era. That there is a real, I don't know if it's ideological, but there's a real divide here. And I think a lot of people think that keeping the rates high simply because of a fear of what could happen with tariffs is not the way to go. So I think you have a very odd situation where this seems like, oh, it's Trump, he's mouthing off again, but actually, no, you really do have a divide, and we need to figure out how best to navigate that. And we'll see. And I think Trump is frustrated because the Fed has control over this. The Fed is not acting. Trump understands, he's a businessman. He understands this stuff. He is on the side that thinks no, you should cut rates. And I think he's frustrated. And his advisors broadly agree with him. I mean, his advisors do not agree completely on tariff policy. That's an ongoing discussion, but you don't have disagreement in his advisors. If you look at what Bessent's saying, or if you look at what Lutnick is saying, that we need a rate cut. And I think he's just frustrated. And I think that's where a lot of this is coming from, that he understands it and that the experts really are split on this and that people are taking these actions. And I think he's frustrated because it's hard to explain to the American people, I'm the president, but I don't have control over this one aspect, and therefore it is not completely my fault if these economic things happen. And I think that's part of where he's coming from as well, is I'm going to get blamed. He's saying, I'm going to get blamed for what you all are doing. And you're telling me I have no control. This is not right. And it's just frustration coming from that.
You know, I think that last point is an interesting one in terms of the politics, because I mean that is something that we see a lot, and something that does drive me a little crazy. You know, voters have a pretty simplistic view of the economy and a super simplistic view of the president's relationship to the economy. You know, in terms of what happens in terms of outcomes, and we don't see it as much anymore in a more polarized world. But you know, in general, presidential approval historically has very much tracked economic performance. Really, you know, unemployment and inflation, and you know, that explains a good chunk of the variance there. And I've always thought that was I'm looking for the right word. I mean, it's what voters do. You know, it's what citizens do. It's an empirical regularity, but it is somewhat misguided. You know, it's not to say that presidents don't matter in terms of economic stuff. Certainly, the choices that they make do, but at the same time, you know, we have a lot of other things that impact the economy, and you know, here's one of those scenarios. You know, where you do have you know, something even within the government, within the Fed. That does have a lot of that power. You know, a few thoughts on. So I get where he's frustrated. I mean, he wants them to do something else. He's going to get the blame, you know, one way or the other. And so. You know, I do certainly understand that as a frustration. I think it's a frustration that all presidents have, you know, is that, you know, kind of whatever else is happening, they have sort of limited ability to control their fate on economic issues. You know, in terms of the cuts, you know, or not cuts, you know, I will say with the caveat that I'm not an economist, and that, you know, economists are certainly divided on this. the other charge that the Fed has is inflation, which is, back around a fairly manageable level right now. But sort of that's their other mandate. When we're doing monetary policy, it's balancing, sort of growth and inflation. And it could be, frankly, that the facts on the ground have changed to the point where the time for a cut might be now. He's wanted it from the get go, but that ultimately, for balancing those two concerns, we didn't necessarily have those kind of GDP growth concerns earlier in the year, but we're getting there now. That's certainly what Powell was talking about earlier this week. Certainly, the last unemployment report and sort of those revisions were indicative of an economy slowing a little bit. So, it might be time to put the foot on the gas a little bit as far as that goes. So it could well be that we get something different out of this meeting, this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say on your point about voters don't understand presidential control of the economy, I think that's true. I think what's frustrating Trump here is that this is a particularly extreme case of it because voters don't understand that he has no control over this, and that it's not that the normal situation is voters don't understand that the president has limited ability to control the economy. This is an issue where he's stuck. It's not his call, but he's going to get blamed for it. So it's the normal situation on steroids, and I fully understand.
Oh, I think that's a fair description. Yeah, I mean, my normal take is that, hey, there's a business cycle, there's international trade, et cetera. So yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Is that this does take it, for his frustrations to a higher level. But
this is like an issue where people are specifically focused on that he cannot influence, and yet he's going to get the blame. It does not matter. He's going to get blamed. And I think that's frustrating because it reflects the oddity of the Fed of, if Jerome Powell truly wants to be independent, then why isn't he also getting up there when he's making his statements and saying, this is my call, not the president's. If I'm wrong, blame me. Blame the board. We voted. Don't blame the president. I think that would go a long way, but you don't hear that. And that's because Powell doesn't want the political accountability. He wants to sit above the fray as an expert. And I think there are some politics involved here. Unfortunately, I think more and more politics have creeped in, and I don't know what Powell is doing, but there is an odd political view here that I think does tie into tariffs and a knee-jerk reaction by Powell and some others that you should never use tariffs, even if you're using them only as a negotiating tool to remove a non-tariff trade barrier.
I suppose part of this too, I have maybe a more charitable read a little bit, but that, kind of like, the facts on the ground have changed as far as GDP. I think that perhaps the facts on the ground have changed with tariffs a bit as well. Although I think it's still, pretty up in the air, but we admittedly have not seen, kind of the worst case scenario here in terms of, where people had concerns about, the impact of tariffs on growth and such. But part of that is that, some of the rates are lower than expected. We have, the China ones, at least the worst version of it, keeps getting delayed, et cetera. So, it could also be that, hey, again, the facts on the ground have changed. So maybe that's less of a concern now. Again, if they're trying to, I think the biggest version, in particular, the biggest number on China, that would have been pretty inflationary. And, we keep kind of kicking that down the road. As far as that. So we're not really seeing the impacts that they were anticipating. So it's entirely possible that, the facts on the ground have changed to the point where, a rate cut is finally in order. But I guess that remains, we'll have to see what they do down the road.
Yeah, and I do think to a certain extent, inflation due to targeted tariffs on China that makes goods scarce is different from inflation due to pumping free money into the economy. You deal with that differently, and that one may be shorter term, the other longer term.
Yeah. So I guess that's I think one of the big questions here is how are these going to play out? And we don't have a great answer for that yet. So I guess the other kind of aspect of this, we've spent a little more time on the economic side of things. But in terms of independence here, thinking about sort of the way this is structured legally and such. The president has pretty. I think this is kind of one of those ongoing concerns of Trump. Going back to the first term, where he's tremendously frustrated that he can't just staff everything however he wants, and that there are things that are outside of the president's ability to appoint right away or on certain terms or what have you. And so certainly I can see where this is this fits right in line with a lot of his past sorts of frustrations. That said, I guess we'll see what happens here with Lisa Cook and any impropriety that might have happened. But it really does seem like he's looking for any way to get rid of a couple of people and replace them with their own, because he generally lacks the authority to do that. The Fed is built to be independent, and that comes with pluses and minuses certainly. But it feels like he's kind of grasping at sort of limited levers here. His thing has been, kind of from term one, a frustration with, kind of the bureaucracy and independence of bureaucracy. And so, this to me feels, very much in line with that, where, he's kind of pressuring people to go, even though he's got pretty limited control over that.
I think it's, I agree, and I think if you want to put it so philosophically, is he truly believes in a unitary executive. And
for sure.
I think one of the large reasons he believes in that is clear political lines of accountability. I mean, that was part of why the unitary executive was created. It was not just we need an energy dispatch from the Federalist. It was also, in the same Federalist Papers, Hamilton makes clear you have a clear line of accountability. The buck stops with one man. The voter is going to hold him clearly accountable. And when you interject insulated expert bureaucracies, you break that clear line of accountability. And when you add the kicker to that of the bureaucracy is, there is some element of a deep state, and the bureaucracy is no one disputes liberal, you have a situation where it's, wait, I'm going to get blamed by the actions of bureaucrats who think they are independent from me and oppose my policies. Oh, heck no. I think that's where the frustration is coming from, is that he's sitting there thinking, I believe in the unitary executive. I believe in clear lines of accountability. You should hold the president accountable, but I'm going to get blamed, including by my own base, because I can't deliver on a campaign promise because I don't have control over some bureaucrat who opposes me ideologically. No, I have control, and it's better that way. I'm responsible. I'm out there every day taking responsibility. If you don't like what the federal government is doing, you know how to fix it. And when we get into all this insulated bureaucracy, the problem. Now, I will say the Fed is kind of unique. You've seen him successfully. The Supreme Court has said he can do it. I mean, they effectively overruled Humphrey's executor. They didn't actually overrule it. They basically just said it was factually distinct. Bureaucracy has evolved. He now has that control and is exercising it. The one kind of limitation is the Fed, because the Fed is unique. And that's why I think we see him going on the margins, as you indicated. But I think the frustration is clear. And I really do think that if Powell wants to rest on his independence, he needs to make clear who the buck stops with.
Mm-hmm. I do think, I certainly, taking a somewhat different... go ahead.
To finish that thought, it frustrates me because Powell very clearly tries to avoid that. Whereas if you look at Powell very technocratic, not taking responsibility, compared to like Alan Greenspan, who was very clear up there, I'm making the call. This is on me. Mm-hmm. And Powell kind of hides it in technical language. I think we need more of the, I'm making the call. It's not the president's call. I'm independent, so blame me.
And I think that does, it gets into sort of there's a complicated relationship here. I mean, there are, I think, bigger democratic theory questions, and there are bigger, there are some public perception questions, as well. There is, I think, as a practical matter, the political economy story, from kind of comparative politics, the general finding there is that kind of central bank independence is good. That.
Oh, I'm not fighting that.
Right. So, but just to provide a little context there, but I think you're right. I mean, there's a tension here with accountability, and so, generally speaking, if you put the kind of control of these things in the hands of politicians, they tend to make fairly bad choices in a lot of cases. Just running economies really hot, at certain moments or whatnot, not having restraint where they should. So there is sort of a case here for this to take some of the power out of the hands, to provide some insulation there from kind of the political stuff. But it is a challenge. I mean, there is, the Fed is unpopular, I think, with a lot of the public, to the extent that they know. Certainly, there's, in other times, I've certainly seen left critiques, to put it mildly, or conspiracies, to put it maximally, about the Fed controlling the world and what have you. So, I think there is something to be said for independence. I guess I have a less charitable read on Trump and the Trump and sort of the unitary executive, and I guess it's that I like technocrats, on some level, but there is fundamentally a tension in a political system that is based on democratic accountability, where we do have a lot of insulated institutions, whether it's the courts, whether it's the bureaucracy, et cetera. And there are, I think, cases to be made for doing some of that on matters of sort of technical things. I don't know that I want the public voting on the FAA or things like that, directly.
No.
Hyperbole, a little bit, but I guess I have perhaps a less charitable read, in terms of Trump. I get the tension that, hey, I'm going to be held accountable. I'd like more control. I also think in general, he just likes control. We don't, he wants to be the CEO of America in a lot of ways. I mean, that's his background. That's how he sells himself, et cetera. But we have sort of a long history here of that really not being how things work. Richard Neustadt had a book on presidential power back in the 60s, where, he had this anecdote about Eisenhower, and somebody saying, well, he thinks since he's a general, he's just going to come in and snap his fingers and make things happen. And that's not how this works. And so we have, I think, a longer history of this, going back. Now, again, I think for the unitary executive folks, hey, that was wrong then and it's wrong now, and we should have more control. But I do think there's also the concern about sort of politicizing some of these basic government functions, which is where we have things like civil service reform and such, to place some limits on how much influence, how much sway kind of the political element has over the rest of the government. But you had an interjection a second ago, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I think the control aspect, no doubt, the president wants control. He believes ideologically, he believes he's a businessman. It's similar to I was a general, I want control. No doubt. I think the point I'm making here is if a judge restrains the actions of the administration, they are literally putting their name on a document saying, I am enjoining Secretary Noem from doing X. There is no doubt over the accountability. They're still insulated. That's up to the American people. If they want to pass a constitutional amendment or remove life tenure because they don't like the insulated results, they can. But there's clear accountability there in a broad sense, not in a judges shouldn't decide on the law. Same way it's not the Fed should just react to politics. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you don't have the line of who makes the decision, the American people can say, do I like having the economic experts debate? Maybe I do, maybe not. It's not they're reviewing the decisions in a strictly accountable way of, do I like this vote the congressman made? Do I like this executive order? I think it's a different type of accountability. And I think what's making Trump particularly frustrated is that Powell won't take accountability. He won't go out there and say, I disagree with the president's advisors who have broad perspectives on tariffs and their effect on inflation. I disagree with them all. It is my call. I had the votes. My call. And you know what? If the economy tanks because of the inflation, you blame me. You don't blame him. And then we can have a debate about Fed being insulated. But that's not what he's doing because he knows the president will be blamed. And that's, in my mind, not okay, because even if you're the technical person in there in an isolated role like the Fed, which is kind of unique because it's public-private, it's the one kind of remaining isolated bureaucratic role, you need to take accountability for what you did. Because the American people need to decide over the long term, do we like the decisions that are coming out of this technocratic branch? And if you hide the accountability, speak in technical terms that people don't follow, and then just let the president get blamed, that's not okay by my measure. And I think that's where the frustration is coming from in this particular case.
I see that. I guess, at this point, maybe one thing that works in Trump's favor a little bit here, as far as the accountability goes, he's done a good job, even if Powell's not coming out and publicly saying, hey, this is my call, this is my role. Trump has made the Fed much more salient than it's been in a long time. And so on some level, I'm not sure that it matters what Powell says. Powell doesn't have, Trump's got the platform, he's got the bully pulpit, Powell doesn't. To an extent, I feel like Trump's kind of gotten what you can. I don't know what a Powell statement, maybe from an ethical standpoint, sure, that makes some sense. But, from a public standpoint, frankly, Trump kind of feuding with Powell and Cook, I think kind of gets him in about the same place as a practical matter. But
I think it's on me is something that you can quote to the people who are trying to mess around and play politics and saying, no, he himself said it. It's not on me. And that I do think this is an actual problem. Like, I want to be very clear on that. I just think that it is a real problem, the way this is happening. You can't. Yeah, I just don't think it's sustainable to have an economic branch that won't account for their isolation. And I'm not comparing them to the judiciary, but to take that example, since you introduced it, not only is the judge's name on the order, the judges are very clear as to, I have life tenure. That is why I can do this. They're not afraid to make the call or to stand by it, at least the good ones. And I think that's part of the problem.
But I guess I'm having a hard time seeing that here exactly because, we have a public vote. We had dissent last time, as you mentioned, et cetera. So, I don't feel like this is as shadowy as that. Again, whether or not exactly he said the words that he should say, I do feel like we're at the point where at least people that are following the news are getting a fairly good apart from Powell saying flat out, I take responsibility. It just certainly seems at this point that this process is pretty clear and more salient than it's been in a long time. So,
on agreement there, and I think that's a good thing. I just think we need more. To carry the analogy, the judges have no problem saying, we are counter majoritarian for a reason. They have no problem defending it. I haven't heard anything out of that from Powell.
Okay, now that's a fair point. Is explaining kind of the why are we organized this way, and I think there's a pretty good case for why they're organized that way. But no, I think you're now that in the broader institutional terms, yeah, I think that makes some sense. That we have not had that more direct conversation about why is the Fed structured the way that the Fed is structured, and so.
But that's all part of how I feel Powell is hiding and needs to stand up and put his big boy pants on and explain what he's actually doing.
But I guess it's a conversation that I feel like we've really never had, particularly. It's, we certainly have had, Fed chairs that are more and less visible, but it's not something that has been sort of a big conversation in the past either. This is frankly more coverage of the Fed than I've seen in years. So anyhow, well, I think with that brings us about to an hour. So I think it's probably time to wrap up. It was great talking with you.
Great talking with you.
To wrap up, if there's anything that we discussed this week that you disagreed with or that you have questions about, or gosh, if you really, really liked, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is mail@politicsguys.com, and you can also reach us through Facebook or X. We've got links to where you can find us there in the show notes. We also have a Discord discussion from our forum for our supporters, which Mike is on all the time. I'm on occasionally, and other hosts are on as well. Nice, robust discussion there, so something certainly you might want to check out. You can support us on Patreon, where you can even sign up for a free trial. That gets you a number of things here. As a supporter, you get ad-free versions of everything that we release. You get the full-length midweek episode instead of just a preview, access to the Discord group, and certainly the satisfaction of being part of the community. If a monthly Patreon contribution is too much of a commitment, you've got issues with Patreon, or you're a current supporter and just want to give a little extra one-shot contribution, we also have PayPal and Venmo support options as well. Again, linked in the show notes, as well as at politicsguys.com/support. If you'd like to get our full-length midweek episodes and are not in a position to financially support the podcast right now, just email Mike, who is mike@politicsguys.com, and he'll be happy to set that up for you. Whether you're a supporter or not, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever podcast app you use, as well as share episodes on social media. And finally, we've got a very special thanks to our executive producers, Wilmer Moreno, Daniel Toe, Ryan Beasley, Don Oglesby, Derek Schmidt, Dakota Heath, Jason Chrysler, Dave Dean, Jeremy Larson, Brian Mataza, and Jody Marie Miller. We'll be back with a new episode next week, and we hope you'll join us.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,